And so in my own life, God started to speak, and I started to hear. Now, of all those stories that God is speaking to me, I want to pick up just two stories that really mean a lot to me, because it shows God's love. It shows God's compassion. Now, the first story is a fairly recent one. There was a hurricane called Katrina. It came over Fort Lauderdale, Florida, crossed Florida into the Gulf, and then went by New Orleans and flooded the city. So that's a monumental event. Now, 1 week and a few days before Katrina hit Florida, my cousin called me from Miami, and she said, Aunt so-and-so died. We are planning the funeral for next week. Now, this is happening Wednesday or Thursday of the week before Katrina. And because we want everybody to be able to come and fly in, we will advise you what day of the week, next week, the funeral will be. Now, it turned out that they fixed the Friday of Katrina for the funeral, but we didn't know that the week before. And so I was thinking, yes, since I don't know what the day is for the funeral, why don't I just reserve one entire week at a timeshare in Fort Lauderdale, and whichever day the funeral would be, I'd be available. So I called up the company, made the reservation, I'm all set. And I was planning to go with my wife and one of my daughters. We would be leaving Saturday or Sunday, reserved from Sunday to Sunday, so we would have about 7 days in Florida, and any day the funeral would be okay. But we could not leave Saturday or Sunday. We were ready to leave Monday morning. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting in the car outside, waiting for my wife and for my daughter to get into the car. The furthest thing from my mind, at that moment, God spoke very clearly. I don't want you to go to Florida. I was looking forward to being in Florida. So I was sure it was God. So I get out of the car. The car is all loaded. Everything we need for a week. Close the door, go back inside, and surprise, surprise, tell my family the trip is canceled. Why? I don't know, but the trip is canceled. Are you going by airplane? No, the trip is canceled. You can imagine to have such a change of plans with no explanation whatsoever was very distressing to everybody in the house. So everybody was mad. Monday goes by, nothing. Tuesday goes by, nothing. But on Wednesday, I noticed on the Weather Channel, where the pictures of the Caribbean, that there were a bunch of clouds in the Bahamas on Wednesday. On Thursday, that becomes a tropical depression. And on Friday, a hurricane Katrina hits Port Everglades and Fort Lauderdale. So God knew ahead of time there would be a hurricane. The day set for the funeral. Now, because of the hurricane, they had to advance the funeral 1 day ahead of time. everybody in the family that was flying in practically missed the funeral because it happened before they could land. On top of that, those that were landing on Friday, some airports were closed, some hotels were closed, and so it was a big mess. I have one of my brothers, he says, well, when we got to the hotel, there was no electricity. So we tried to find lodging with a friend. But driving to that friend's house, we saw coconut flies in the air, we saw sparks from electric wires, and we heard transformers blowing up because it was during the part of the wind, the windy part of Katrina. Now, the reason I feel so happy is that I obeyed God. He gave me no explanation. He's the boss. He doesn't have to give me an explanation. If I'm clear, he said something, then I go on from that. I just obeyed. And the second reason I'm so happy is that I was going to spend $450 in gas. A minivan, 20 to 24 miles per gallon, 1,000 miles to get to Florida, 1,000 miles to come back, 500 to 1,000 miles of running around. So that was going to take me so much money in gas that would be practically wasted because during the hurricane you cannot go to the beach and whatever. And on top of that, my wife doesn't like lightning, she doesn't like bad weather, so she would have been very unhappy. So I said, thank you, God, for without me praying specifically for the trip, without me asking anything, just out of the goodness of God's heart, He just gave me this gift of His friendship and of His word. So this story then illustrates that it's beneficial to have faith enough in God